Welcome to the Customer First Show, putting customers at the heart of your business.
Hi there, Ruth. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. Would you like to just introduce yourself to the listeners, please?
I'm thrilled to join you on the podcast, and yes, I'd love to introduce myself. Thank you, first of all, for spending time with us on the podcast. My name is Ruth Crowley. I'm currently brand strategy executive with the Hudson Group. Previously to this, I was with the Lowe's Home Improvement Company, which is a Fortune 100 company in the US. I've also worked with brands like Harley Davidson, Nickelodeon, M&M Mars, and the Host Marriott Corporation. So I have a diverse experience and love to help share some of that knowledge with someone. I'm from Ireland, living in the US, and thrilled just to share some of our information and insights with you.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, Ruth, you've experienced quite a few things in your career. I was having a look at your LinkedIn profile, and coming to customer experience. Coming into these kind of roles, you've seen quite a few things. Could I ask you, are there some fundamental principles that you believe in around business, around customer experience, maybe?
Well, I think it's, first of all, I think you're 100% right. There's fundamental principles in everything, but I believe that if you're in any business that serves the customer, whether it's retail, consulting, any sector that you choose to engage in, everything has to be centered around the customer, around the end user. And that's one of the big principles. You know, I've had a lot of companies tell me, oh yeah, we're completely customer focused, but in fact, they're focused on adopting the objectives to who it is they want to serve. They were adapting what they want to sell to the customer, as opposed to defining what the customer wants and applying their model to suit that and make it a win-win situation. I would also tell you that one of the fundamental principles for me was engaging from an executive sponsorship in it. Because if you don't, then you have a loss at the end of the day. If there's another initiative that comes into play, and it's happened to me, where everybody fully agrees that they're customer focused and you want to make a great experience, but then you have a serious sales shortfall, for example, and everybody changes their focus to be focused just on driving sales, where I believe sales are an outcome of providing an exceptional customer experience. The last one I'd share with you is that getting people involved in understanding why experience is important and what it is and how they're absolutely critical to the overall success as one of the primary points of contact with customers. I would say that that's also a fundamental priority for me.
Great. I mean, there's three pieces of great advice there. The one I'm going to just repeat what you said. You said something to the tune of sales are an outcome of an outstanding customer experience. Could you just dig into that a little bit for me, please? And maybe also say why, the example you gave was great. We've all been in that meeting where, the senior guy is saying, or the senior girl saying, we've had a bad month, drop everything, get the numbers in. Could you just explore that for me, please?
I can, of course. So I believe that if you have a good infrastructure, sales are an outcome. If you have good people in the stores or in your consulting group or in your business environment, whether it's an office or a service place, that the outcome is defined by the people. And I've had several experiences personally where we profess to be focused on creating an optimal experience. But sometimes it's difficult for people to understand that behavior drives everything for the customer. And so if you can understand the customer behavior and where the customer is mentally, well, then you can drive what you create to suit their needs. And so I believe that it's really important to kind of convey that and to bring that into the culture, to change the mindset in an organization such that that becomes the priority. In every instance where I've worked with people, and it's always a collaborative effort, by the way, but where we've worked to create an infrastructure and a culture where the customer is at the center of everything you do, then you win. If the focus is just on sell this product or sell this portion of something, then it's a singular focus and it's short term. Whereas if you have something that's part of a bigger ecosystem, then it's much easier and much more sustainable results down the road, because it's part of a solution as opposed to just one item you're trying to do.
Okay, I like that. I really like that.
Thanks.
And again, you know, you get the depth of experience there that you've been involved in. I mean, do you want to highlight any particular project or a couple of examples of areas where you think you've seen, you know, stuff you've been involved in yourself, or some stuff you've seen which really nails a good CX design or a good CX mindset, maybe?
We have one great example that I can tell you about that's very recent. And, you know, there was initially, one of the reasons I think that customer experience is an inclusive process is because then people understand why they become the advocates and they can take it forward. One of the reasons CX fails, and we can talk about this a little bit later, is that it's a journey. It's not a one and done. It's not a check the box, tick the box, and you're done. But I'll give you an example of recently worked on a project with an amazing team. We were working on a store design. How do you change the structure within the store to, first of all, make the service experience more efficient, but also to elevate the overall flow through in the store, etc. We had a lot of people working with us who were very qualified operators, had a very distinct point of view, and so the natural tendency for everybody was to just do what they were asked, do what they were told. And I asked the group that I worked with to say, let's create what we believe is right. And what we believed to be right was based on experience. It was also based on customer intercept studies. It was based on customer ethnography, and also observing, like following, living in the customer's footsteps. In the store, we also worked with the associates to better understand what their complications with, what were some of the challenges they had to work with on a day-to-day basis. Because if we had a more human empathy around the overall experience, perhaps we could design to suit that rather than just designing what someone thought was right. So long story short, we developed what everybody thought they wanted. And then we designed what we believed would be right. And so we brought, first of all, the group into what they wanted. And they said, yep, this is great. We like this. We've done this previously. This will work. This will work. And we said, okay, we really love this. We think it's a viable solution. However, and then we took them around and built a live prototype and said, what about this? And immediately they completely stopped and they saw it with a different lens. And so what I tend to do is, rather than a telescopic view or a microscopic view, I tend to have a kaleidoscope view on it. And you do a lot of what we do in human-centered design is diverge and converge. What we did was show the group not only what was based on best practices, but also considered what the associates and the customer had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We also anticipated best in class in the industry, like some of the emulators we had, and also digitally, what are we going to need in the future, such as self-checkout, etc. And so by, if you will, anticipating some of the needs and anticipating the demands of the business down the road, we created a solution that was more advanced, that was more customer centric, but also served the needs of operations in that we could help people more effectively, we could serve them more efficiently, and we could also create a model that was more flexible to change with the ever-changing needs in the retail environment. And we did that through the people, but we had to help people see it. As you know, 80% of the images sent to the brain are visual. And if we could connect that visually so it became something they could resonate with, then it made it a lot more material. And of course, we went ahead, and I'm going to bring you forward to the end of the story now. We implemented it. It was, first of all, of course, went into test mode, and that was one of the values of doing a prototype. We could tweak it and we could modify it before going full scale. But the revised solution went into test. Results are 30% up. People are happier, associates can serve more, they feel more equipped and informed, and the results are up. So long term, the customer experience and keeping that at the center of our focus was completely the right thing to do.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I was scribbling notes down as you were talking of follow-on points. I also brought a quote which I really like, and you talked about that. It's a quote from Steve Jobs, who said, "You can't just ask customers what they want and then try to give it to them, because by the time you've built it, they'll want something new." And the bit you talked
That's
about
exactly
in there, which is
right.
really good, and I think people get wrong, is the whole, prototype, show them, let them really touch and feel the idea. And then the other thing you talked about was future proofing. I thought those are two really good points that a lot of people get wrong, don't they?
That's right. Or, in a corporate infrastructure, I have a saying that I use. First of all, if it's collaboration, is like multiplication. So if I listen intently to what people are saying, I may be able to interpret it more effectively. But the other key thing is engaging people. And I'm really a fan of not allowing the vertical functional silo get in the way of the horizontal journey that the customer, the associates have to follow every day.
I like that. Can I come back to your book, your chapter in the book? So it was lovely collaborating with you. You had a really simple title. It was that customer experience is not an initiative. That's sometimes you can say a lot in a few words. What were you trying to explain with that statement, please?
And so, I hope that the listeners today will absolutely go and get the book, because I can absolutely promise you it's an amazing resource tool with practical input from people who have lived the experience. So it's just a great experience. Also, not convoluted. I mean, it's very simple, very straightforward. But for me, exactly what you said, customer experience sounds simple, but it's not easy. And it's not an initiative, which is, again, why so many people get it wrong, because they think it's a tick the box. They think you just do a project and it's over. Whereas if you consider it like a continual journey, you can have more long-term results. And that's what we tried to articulate in the chapter, was that if you see customer experience as an initiative, at the end of the day, you won't optimize the results that you can achieve by having a more long-range view. The other piece is that we've always talked about doing small steps first and understanding the journey. And we talk about that a little bit, like how considering the journey and where the gaps are, how you can really build something and build momentum to drive performance over time.
Yeah, good, thank you. And I'm going to pick up another statement you make in your chapter as well. Changing the culture requires unrelenting focus. It takes time. It's not something you can deliver overnight.
Absolutely not. And the engagement of people is what, for me, has always helped make it work. Not only people on the line, but also part of my job was to educate executives. They used to think, customer experience is very soft. And, I like when you talk about this emotion, but it's a bit soft. Whereas in fact, what you learn if you really consider human-centered design methodology is that it's based in psychology, and emotion drives behavior. And if you can get that into the mindset, it'll really help drive it. And I remember with one of my leaders once, we talked about, and he said, well, why should I even care about it? And I said, here's why, because as an organization, you have to differentiate. There's such a proliferation of offers available in the industry today. You have to be able to differentiate and be able to resonate above the noise for the customer. I shared with him that in 2000, 50% of the companies in the Fortune 500 in the year 2000 are no longer in business. And by 2025,
just give me that stat. Just give me that stat again, because I think that's quite a powerful stat.
I'm going to, yeah, and it becomes more powerful. 50% of the companies in the Fortune 500 in 2000 no longer exist.
Wow.
And by the year 2025, 42% of the current companies in the Fortune 500 will cease to exist. And so when trying to encourage people to consider a more fact-based, a more analytical, a more experiential view of the customer, the big question is, do you want to be a statistic, or do you want to succeed for the long term with the customer? And that was generally all I needed. And there's also so many facts, like the long-term value of a customer who feels that they have a good experience with a brand is 30% higher on average than those companies who don't have a high customer experience. And one of the things we can share on the screen is some of the impacts. With my recent leader in my prior company, we shared that 1 point improvement in a customer experience index could generate additional millions of dollars. And I think that that can be adopted and applied across a spectrum of brands, but there's so much industry evidence and statistic to show that it can be. This is why we think customer experience is the wave of the future, why you're going to hear more about it in 2020, because it's a differentiator, and it's how you create a long-term value, a long-term relationship with your customer.
Definitely. And that, when it comes down to that dollar note sign, it really gets people's attention. And, there's so much evidence to support what you're saying. That small change, in experience and enjoyment leads to massive benefits to a company's bottom line.
You're 100% right. There's a current study that says that 70% of customers will reject a brand, will just abandon it if the experience isn't simplified and seamless for them. And I think that's the one thing I would urge everybody to consider is it's not just one element of the experience. Like everybody used to speak about an omnichannel experience, and it's one of the terms. It's one of the terms in the industry that drives me the most crazy is omnichannel. And for me, it's about the total customer. We have to balance this chasm between digital minds and analog hearts, because for the customer, it's one unified experience, and we have to keep it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Omnichannel, unified experience. These are terms which are used widely, but I do think that people don't tend to understand that. And the bit you said at the end, it's one experience for the customer. I think
that's
sums
exactly
it up well.
Right. Yep. Like my joke, and if we do conferences, is when is the last time you said to your husband, your partner, your puppy, your child, oh my goodness, I had the most amazing omnichannel experience today? You never say it, but you can say that you have had an amazing experience with a brand. And it's usually, that's one of the things with the customer experience, is it's tied to the customer's perception of how they feel with the brand. One last interesting fact for people, which will hopefully help energize a further commitment to customer experience, is that 80% of company executives, and this is executive across all business sizes, but 80% of executives believe that they are on the right track providing a good experience for their customer.
Yeah, and
You
the
ask the
stats tell us they're
customer,
not.
well, and 18 to 20% of customers agree.
Mm.
And so the gap represents a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
That the objective for us is, how do we maximize that opportunity? How do we be more absolutely relentless about focusing on that to drive results and drive success over time?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a workshop on Wednesday this week, and one of the questions I got asked from one of the delegates is a common question. You know, what do you do when you get a customer who complains? You know, do you always apologize? And I said, well, the reality is, when you've got a complaint, it's a good opportunity to learn and fix things. But the basis of a complaint is that their expectations and your brand haven't matched. You know, so yes, there is a miscommunication, and I do tend to recommend you apologize, even if you don't think it's your fault. But that gap you described is huge, you know, 80% to maybe 20%.
That's 80% and less than 20. The other one is that the customer, even sometimes, for me personally, if I have a customer who's unhappy, the first and most fundamental thing is to say, I understand your concern. Because the customer wants to be treated like a human being, which they are, and they want to feel valued. I had a situation personally Black Friday, worked in stores Black Friday, and people came and they thought that they'd buy the specials of the day, which were gone, of course, in the first 2 hours, which is part of the plan. And I said it to one customer, I understand your frustration, but let me explain how this was planned. And they understood. They said, oh, I think I'm just going to go then. I said, no, come with me. I'm going to help you find other solutions, because at the end of the day, we're not just selling product or service, we're researching need. And by engaging with the customer in a human way, it can help ensure that we build a relationship over time. And what you've said, Naeem, is absolutely critical, because the customer is going to evaluate you not just on where you sit in the market, but how they compare you to everything else they experience. So the lens has become wider, and we have to learn to be more effective filling the needs.
Okay, great. No, I like that. So talk to Ruth Crowley from the US, although she has a very strong Irish accent. Ruth, when your career does eventually come to an end, is there a big mission or objective that you want to try to achieve with all of your work?
Well, in all of the work, I want to help people understand people. I would like to ensure that we raise the level of humanity. I mean, even in the current work, we try to ensure that we're conscientious about, I love to work with kids, first of all. And so even on the retail spectrum, we're trying to understand, how do we engage kids? I do a lot of work with the University of North Texas. How do we bring more people into the business in order to maintain a strong business framework for the future? And so my goal would be to help people help people. And that would be probably after I'm finished a full-time job. Full-time goal from the heart would be to help people help people.
I like that. So if people want to get in contact with you, Ruth, based on what they've seen, on what's the best thing for them? How is the best way to get in contact with you? Is it LinkedIn,
so one
maybe,
of the best
or Twitter?
Yeah,
or what
LinkedIn would be. My preference is always LinkedIn, and then we can take it from there. My LinkedIn information is provided, and we can go from there. From there, I can provide my mobile phone, or we can provide my personal email address. But LinkedIn is always a great framework to do it.
Perfect. And obviously, we're not sitting in the same place at the moment. Just tell me where you're sitting at the moment. What can you see? How's your day been so far?
What I'm sitting is in on the East Coast in the US. It's a little chilly outside, but I just came last night from Las Vegas. And so you have this absolute violent assault on the senses to something that's a little quieter and a little more focused. Currently working on some major brand initiatives. And so again, working with people who are smart and curious and helping them create a model for the future. So it's a good day. Every day is a good day that you learn something. So that's why I'm here.
Brilliant. Okay, well, look, thank you for your time today, Ruth. I think there was a lot of really interesting knowledge that you shared in comments. And the one that I'm really going to think about and take away is one of the earlier statements that you made about the fact that, you know, you get good sales as an outcome of an outstanding customer experience. And the other one, you know, you just reminded us about the fact that emotion drives behavior, you know, and so many people, when their branding and their design, don't focus on that enough. Anything else you want to add as a last comment?
It's a miss. I just wish people success, and I hope, and again, it's not a shameless plug. I've read a lot of books, and the reason for working with this group on this customer experience book is to leverage a lot of experience and shorten the learning curve for our audience. It's very practical. It's not long-winded, convoluted hypertension. It's pure, practical, relevant nuances to help them get along the journey more quickly. So hopefully people will do that, buy into it, and enjoy every single minute of it.
Definitely, definitely. Well, look, thank you for your time. It's been lovely to speak to you.
No worries.
And I'm sure we'll speak to you soon again.
Brilliant. Absolutely, Naeem.